Two. All right, welcome to the podcast, and our subject today, per James, is...
Well, I'm just...
Our opener is...
Opener, yeah, that's not the main subject. Opener is kind of like, what is your... Like, when you go to a movie theater, what's your choice of snack?
Yeah.
And then conversely, when you're at home, what is your choice of snack?
Yeah.
Because those are two different areas. You know,
Yeah.
what do you have access to? What do you go chase after?
Right.
Like, I love at home, I love Sour Patch Kids.
Okay.
I mean, they murder your taste buds. You can't taste anything for the rest of the day.
Right.
But that's usually it's movie time, so it's like late at night. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And then I don't really do a lot of fancy drinks at home, so just maybe like water or something. That's kind of like my movie at home kind of thing.
Okay.
Sometimes I'll do microwave popcorn, but that's at home.
Okay.
And then theater, I'm pretty bread and butter, very boring at the theater. And I get my drink and I get my popcorn.
Okay.
And I don't really stray off that too often. In South Texas, they sell you pickles.
Oh, yeah. I've heard about that.
And I sometimes would get one of those because it's great with the saltiness of the popcorn and everything too. I was like, oh, it's a good combination.
Yeah.
But it's like it's really hard to find that elsewhere.
Right.
Not a lot of people do that. And like I know they get called weird for doing that, but believe me, it's a good treat.
Right.
They put it in like little baggies that collects all the juices and stuff. It doesn't get all over the place and give it to you. It is a good movie theater snack.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay. Vicky?
Similar in both avenues. I tend to go for buttered popcorn, definitely, but sometimes at home I don't do anything.
Really,
but if I am going to do
like just chill out and
just chill,
okay,
and be like, fight it. But I do go for buttered popcorn in any instance. Sometimes in the movies I'll go for like a good chocolate, like the Bunch of Crunch or like the
there you go.
Junior Mints. Those are like my two go-tos. Sometimes Raisinets. I just like chocolate. Always.
Okay. Movie theater popcorn is always a good thing. Like it's overpriced, obviously, and it's terrible.
Oh, it's so bad.
But it's worth the experience at least to do it. And then at home, it runs the gamut from like peanut M&Ms.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And then like I don't know, like cookies or some kind of something or another. I don't watch a lot of movies at home until we just started recently doing it because of this podcast. But I like to just sit and watch movies. I curl up with my blanket and I'm not an active snacker during movies at home watching Netflix.
I get it from my dad. My dad was always like solid, like loved his popcorn and such. Yeah. And had to have like his snackies while he was chilling out the movies.
Oh geez. Okay.
So it was kind of one of those things like, all right, like even at home, when we were at home as kids and stuff, he's like, when microwave popcorn came around, he was like, yes. He was like the first man in line.
Oh boy.
To get all that. I mean, before that, he would make those stuff in like the pot with a little thing. He bought like the air popper thing where you pour it in there and the air spins it around, spits it out. Yeah. He had all the gadgets for making his popcorn.
Okay.
So I think that's probably why I get like, I like to have like a little something. Yeah. Just to snack on while the movie's going on.
Okay.
And that's where it comes on. It's like, thanks, Dad.
Well, there you go.
So, yeah.
Something you learn something new about James every day.
Yeah.
Welcome to Nerds by Screenlight. We'll be back because we are taking a deep dive, or a dive, as it were, into the past, back into the 80s once more. And this time, it's with the Neverending Story.
There's so many good, interesting movies at that time frame.
And we're gonna talk about the sequels here as well in a little bit, but we'll start with that. So strap in, hold on to something, and get ready because here we come with Nerds by Screenlight.
Get nerdy with me. Talk nerdy to me. Get nerdy with me. All I really need for you to do is just please.
I can stop.
Talk to me. Talk nerdy to me.
Welcome back to Nerds by Screenlight. My name is Aaron.
I'm James.
I'm Vicki.
And we are back today to talk about one. There's been a lot of movies in the past where we've looked at or we've talked about that come from the 80s, the early 80s, mid 80s, and late 80s and early 90s that you look at them now and you're just like, oh, it has not held up. It has not managed to keep it. Like, you're just like, I will never watch this again. I'm taking it off my top 10 lists. However, there are exceptions to this rule. And the one exception that we found last night is the Neverending Story. And it's interesting that this movie, I think people look at it and it's really weird. Like they look at like the characters in the story and the ideas, and you think, well, that just seems really kitschy. Like that just seems really like weird, like corny, whatever. And you might skip over it and be like, we're not gonna. Like I don't think it's worth my time.
Oh, even right in the beginning too, you have like those corny bullies,
right?
Like
who are chasing the kid.
Yeah. Stamped from a mold. Of, this is bully.
Yeah. But then, like it continues every turn of the film and every moment as we're gonna kind of walk through. It really does a heck of a good job.
Oh yeah.
It's one of the better films to come out of the 80s. And I think because nostalgia is a hell of a drug, we like look back on like Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. And we look at that and we go, oh, it's such a fun movie. And then we look at it now as like older, like adults. And you're like, oh no, this is not funny.
Yeah, no.
And I'm not sure if a kid would find it funny in 2022. That's a really interesting conversation to probably have with a child.
The
at some
times
point.
have changed.
Yeah, they have. But even I want to to take a small rabbit trail. I even think when we watched it as kids, it did seem a little excessive. It didn't feel like the original. It didn't feel like there was that same magic.
Like we were talking about Home Alone 2.
Home Alone 2,
right?
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
It just
make sure.
It just kind of was like, I mean, it's you laugh at all the right parts and the bad guys get beat up and it's funny, haha. But there's also a certain point where you're just like, okay, this is a little obscene and absurd at this point. So that's a constant struggle with that film for me. Is just like, okay, like are we going to do this again? Thankfully,
I mean they did do it again.
Yeah,
just
several
the first movie just rolled over in that one,
and now they're on like
and then
5.
They did 3. Yeah.
The most recent one they did, they actually they brought in Kevin McAllister's brother,
of course,
as a security guard. And he actually is the older brother. His name tag says blank whatever McAllister. So they like tried to shoehorn in the original character, original timeline.
Yeah.
And like make like this is a Home Alone universe or something. Apparently, I haven't watched it. I just watch people like on YouTube talk about it. And they're just like, this is the
universe of terrible parents.
Right.
I guess.
No one was looking for a Home Alone shared universe. Like that was not something that we were hoping for or even wanting or even needing in this time period. So that's neither here nor there. The thing is, Neverending Story is good.
Yeah. The thing is, I was surprised last night to learn that you never saw it before.
No.
Yeah, I never saw it full length, or I saw bits and pieces, and I never really sat down to enjoy it. I think because like it was almost kind of too fantastical maybe for me as a kid. I don't know. It never entered my radar. Like Goonies has always been on my radar.
Yeah.
Of course.
Princess Bride has always been on my radar. Like certain films I've always like have watched and enjoyed and kept like close to my heart. Neverending Story never really became that. Now after watching it last night, it's definitely on the mark. Like I'm holding on to it for a bit. So yeah, let's take a dive into this. It's a really interesting story because it's unassuming in a lot of ways. Like there's no big stars in this movie.
Nope.
Like you look at like Legend, we talked about Legend, like, ooh, it's Tom Cruise, and you look at Labyrinth and it's Jennifer Connelly, and like Mia Sara in Legend, and so you look at that and you go, wow, this one doesn't have any like before they were stars moments.
Yeah. No.
And I think it's kind of interesting.
I have a tidbit about Treyu, which I'll tell you later as we go along.
Okay.
Why his career kind of disappeared after this.
Okay. Fair
Or
enough.
do you want me to go into it now?
I mean, you can talk about it now. So Atreyu is the Western warrior, from the tribes of the West. He is the best warrior in all the Plains people.
That hunt the purple buffalo.
Hunt the purple buffalo. He is the best warrior of all. He's basically the Terminator in the land, and he is summoned to the Empress because he can help stop the Nothing from taking over, from the destruction of the lands of Fantasia. And so Atreyu shows up, and he becomes our protagonist, fighting the antagonist of the Nothing and the eventual.
Even though there's no direct confrontation, which is kind of like, well, there is the Mork. But that's kind of like, that's not the Nothing though.
Right.
There's no direct confrontation with.
Yeah, it's a very much of a man versus nature kind of conversation.
Yeah, like they encounter each other.
Yeah,
like they're in the same place at the same time, but it's not even a fight. It's more like oh no, there's a tornado. I got to get out of here.
It's kind of like the nothing's going to win if you try to stand there and fight it.
Right.
There's no point. There was no conversation of how do we fight this. It was like, how can we get out of here without dying?
Well, even just like they send him to find something. He's searching for something, anything that can stop the nothing. So there is part of that. Like he is searching for something, but he doesn't.
Yeah, they don't. There's no like hints.
Yeah, he's looking and hoping to stumble upon something or someone in the land of Fantasia who can stand against the darkness.
And that's kind of what happens. Like we get those little bits of like overview, like narrator telling us stuff, or he looked in this spot, he looked in the sea of possibilities, he checked this, whatever, and then you get things where it's like, oh, he gets some hints or whatever, and he ends up in this situation. Bam, there you are.
Yeah,
and that's what we get in the movie. With like the fantastic, like the music is amazing when he's searching. Yeah. Like riding his horse. Yeah. Artax.
It's legit.
Looking for everything. Like it lifts you up. It's like, all right, here's some hope.
Yeah.
And then they come around and it's like, wham, swamp of sadness.
Yeah.
Time to feel depressed.
So before we get on there, let's talk about Atreyu and why the actor apparently did not return.
You ready for this?
Sure.
All right. The Gamork and like little like the wolf creature. We'll get to the Gamork as we talk around the main story. But the animatronic thing for it almost took his eyeball out.
Oh my gosh.
Like it malfunctioned.
Okay.
And while they were doing scenes together, and that's why some of those scenes are kind of like really quick and cut like that as they are.
Right.
Because it beat him up. And then Artax the horse did the thing that all horse riders are kind of afraid of happening to them, and it reared up and threw him.
Oh no!
And it like broke two of like kind of like fractured or damaged two of his vertebrae.
Oh.
And so he's always had like pain and difficulty after this movie.
Wow.
So that's why like his acting career and everything else is kind of like pittered out. He's done stuff, but like his back hurts him all the time because of this role.
Really?
And that's why like he just kind of disappears.
I also heard that Gamork almost suffocated him.
Yeah,
because it was
that too. Because it was super heavy.
And one of the directors had the nerve, in my opinion, to be like, this guy was really difficult to work with.
Yeah,
you beat him up.
Yeah, like walking through all the swamp. Like the kid did all his own stunts. Yeah. So what we saw, except for one where it's like they did the thing where like the nothing is like throwing all the wind and stuff at him. He's hanging onto the tree. Yeah. That was the only stunt man for him.
Oh, jeez.
Otherwise, the kid did everything else. Like stomping through all like that, was it thigh-high mud and stuff? That was on a set stage, but he had to spend hours and hours on that stage tromping through mud. Jeez. And they called the kid difficult to work with.
Wow.
Seems like the 80s wasn't kind to child actors.
No,
it wasn't.
Meanwhile, the actor that played Sebastian, the directors were like, "Oh, he was so great.
Right.
He was perfect on camera." He's like, "He's just sitting around,
right? He's
reading a book, closing a window."
Yeah, it doesn't look like you look at his later roles, and he really hasn't starred in much. He's mostly been doing tattoo artistry and stuff like that.
Yep.
But yeah, so he's gone to conventions apparently. So he's been with conventions in Chicago and Philadelphia in 2011, 2012, but nothing recent. His filmography is a mixed bag, obviously from the Neverending Story, and then he was, 2012, 2013 was his last real movie. They weren't really big things.
Yep.
And television, he had something in 2013, but that was the end of it. So it's interesting because you look at the difference between Labyrinth and Legend, and then you look to the Neverending Story, and it's those actors did not go on to acclaim and to big things, and they were just kind of there.
Yeah.
I also think that part of it is that the movies, the sequels, did not do well and were not good. And they didn't keep the actors. So I think if the sequels had happened sooner, after had happened in the Star Trek sequels, and they had kept the characters and kept everything, there might have been a different story here. We might have had a situation where it's man, he's played the character and he's a beloved character. He's grown into the role and he's continued to act it, and but unfortunately he did not keep the actor in any of the sequels.
Well, they also, just if you were the actor that played Atreyu and went through what he did, and then to have them in the directors be like, you're just difficult to work with. We're not having a good time working with you. And you're putting in all this effort.
Yeah.
I would just be like, nah, I'm not working with you again. We're done here.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Neverending Story came out in 1984, July 20th. Neverending Story 2, which eventually we're going to tackle, came out in 1990. So there was 6 years in between the original and then the sequel. And then the third movie came out in 94, did we say? Yeah, 96 in the United States, limited. It came out in Germany in 94. They waited 2 years to bring it on the United States, and that did not go well.
Yeah. Well, I think what we need to remember is it's a German author's book, which I didn't know until I think it was Vicki brought it up, that it was a book.
Yeah.
And I was watching behind the scenes, and I didn't realize it was basically filmed in Germany.
Yeah, it was a German movie based on a German book.
Mm-hmm.
The author hated the movie because it took stuff from his book, but it didn't really do much with it.
Right. Or that he felt it didn't do much with it.
Yeah, and it only really takes the front third of the book and does stuff with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was kind of upset with it.
That's unfortunate.
And I think
because it's a solid movie.
Oh yeah.
But I would have to read the book now. I'd be very curious to read into that. Okay, so let's start from the beginning of this extraordinary film. It starts obviously with the kid, and what I like about this movie, so I'd say this about a lot of movies that we talk about, but what I like about this movie is it's a lot of showing and not telling.
Yep.
We learn that mom's dead.
Yep.
But not because he says, well, your mom's been dead, whatever. It's the tension in the scene is around Bastian's kind of struggle and feeling and being tired and quiet, and Dad just kind of trying to navigate that grief. And we don't know how long it's been since Mom died.
Yeah, and Dad is just kind of very stony and kind of keep your chin up. You can do this.
Yeah.
You just got to keep working at it. Keep working.
Yeah.
And it's kind of you can tell it it falls flat.
Yeah.
Because Dad doesn't seem to know what to say.
Right.
And Sebastian is just kind of,
Well, then he's like, "Oh, this is a good conversation." I was like, "You did all the talking."
Yeah, the dad does all the talking.
But I think he
doesn't really care about what's his son's interests. He doesn't know what unicorns are.
Well, that also leads us to question, was Mom the more involved party?
Yeah.
And that sometimes happened in the 80s when we talk about family roles and who was in charge of what, is Dad was the working guy, and he would go to work, and he would work the long hours and bring home the money, and Mom would be the one who was, maybe possibly working as well, but
part-time job, but mostly at home.
But mostly at home, and she was the one who knew what was going on with her kids, and she was the one who then interfaced there. And so again, dynamics of the 80s and even before that you have to take into that consideration when you dive into these movies, because you look through the lens of 2022 and you're like, well, dude, you didn't help. You just talked to the kid Yeah. But in the 80s, that was probably the accepted norm. That was just, and I think the movie could even be, you could view it through a lens of, it was making a criticism of the fact that Dad didn't know about his kids' interests, or Dad wasn't aware, and he should have been. And because, his wife was doing all the work within that relationship building, now he doesn't know how to talk to his kid.
Yeah.
Now he doesn't know how to actually relate to him or understand the unicorns or understand what's going on and be able to listen to the kid.
Yep.
Doesn't go, hey buddy, what's going on? How are you feeling?
There's this point where he's like, you didn't try out for the swim team like I wanted you to, and I was just like, oh.
Yeah.
So you're mandating the sport your son is gonna get involved with? That's not gonna work.
But for him, from Dad's perspective as a character, that's his solution. Well, kid just needs to get into athletics, and that'll solve everything.
Well, that was the other thing where he said is he made a mention. It was you draw all these horses because he doesn't recognize they're unicorns.
Yeah.
But you're too afraid to get near one. Yeah. So it's it gives you a hint. It was the dad probably even went out of his way and tried to get him involved in horse riding.
Right. Yeah.
But
and
Sebastian
that didn't
is
work out at all.
No, I'm not that kid.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of interesting subtext even within that scene.
Dad
makes that weird raw egg and some orange juice blended up. If any of our listeners out there know what he was doing, or if that's a drink or something,
please help us.
Please help us.
We didn't. I could still Google it, I suppose.
No, I want to leave this out there to see if someone actually does get back with us. What does a raw egg and orange juice do for you? Was that ever a drink?
Was this a joke in the film, or is this an Easter egg? What is this all about?
Juice,
because he went out, he just straight up drank it, and he left. It kind of irritated me to see Dad walk out, leaving that part. There was still stuff in the blender, he didn't rinse it out or whatever. And I don't think he even finished his glass at the table. And I'm like, it's only you and your son, and you just kind of make this mess and then just walk out. I'm
no
like,
comment.
Does that mean like Sebastian does the dishes?
So
or he comes home later from work and takes care of it.
Here you go. We're gonna just answer this question because I don't want to leave our viewers in Google searching through Google to figure this out.
I was thinking it was gonna be an engagement. Now they have to write something on the YouTube instead of just listen.
Right. Well, okay. If you really want to give us, but here's what Google says: is orange juice and raw egg good for you? And they say 1 large egg supplies 6 grams of high quality protein and a large variety of essential nutrients, with the exception of vitamin C. This is why teaming up a fruit or orange juice with an egg and whole wheat loaf bread provides perfect breakfast. But here's the thing: it says, can you drink raw egg with orange juice? The note that it says the citric acid in OJ does not cook the egg and make it safe. So
Dad basically just kind of like poisoned himself?
Aside from the potential risk of salmonella, it's actually more beneficial to eat eggs cooked instead of drinking them raw because the protein is more easily digestible. It's better to skip adding a raw egg to your shakes and smoothies and eat them separately. So it still doesn't make sense.
That happened in the 80s? Like, did people do this?
Yes.
I have questions.
I don't know.
Guys, don't do this. Cook your eggs.
Yeah. I just like sitting there like last night. I was just like, wow, that weird frothy thing with the raw egg. Why are you drinking this?
Apparently, Orange Julius did this in the 80s. So here you go. A book that was written in 1958, and one of the characters juices an orange, beats an egg, and mixes them together for a sick person to drink. Is this a real person? This is a question on Reddit. And the answer is together or separate. Nope, that's not what I wanted. It's essentially the original Orange Julius. They stopped adding raw eggs in the 80s, but up until then, it was made with raw egg whites or whole egg blended right in front of you.
Oh, so he basically made Orange Julius at home.
Yeah. That's a new one for me. I did not know that was a thing that Orange Julius did.
And then you just threw out some viewer interaction.
Gosh.
My inquiries.
You want comments and stuff.
I know. Well, there you go. What do you? I guess we could ask the listeners. What do you think about that? Is that crazy? In 2022, obviously, it's been a couple years since the 80s. Would that be wise to do today? Would you try it? Should you not? We wouldn't recommend it because that's
dangerous.
You're asking for trouble. There's a comment on Reddit. The dad in Neverending Story makes this for breakfast. She called it bionic. My mom used to make this for breakfast in the late 70s, early 80s. She called it bionic juice.
Okay.
It freaked people out to see him do it, though. This person says, yep, I went there to post the same thing about Neverending Story. It always freaked me out seeing him do that. So we are not alone in going, what is happening? So there are questions out there about what in the world is going on with...
And I can't remember, did Sebastian eat anything in that whole scene, or did he just sit there?
I think he just sat there.
Poor guy.
I don't think he ate anything.
Because I remember he was doing some stuff with his hands, but I don't think he actually made anything or ate anything. He just kind of sat there while Dad was talking at him.
Yeah.
Because it's not talking with him. It is talking at him.
Yeah. It does make me sad because it's like but the beauty of this moment, right? And the beauty of what the filmmakers did and how the actors portrayed the scene, because it's Gerald McCraney, who was in the TV show Major Dad. McCraney's been in a lot of great things. He's a fantastic actor with a lot of range. So this was young Gerald McCraney. But what it does is it tells us so much about their relationship. It tells us about the kid that he's not eating, that he's kind of just saying, okay, yeah, Dad, whatever, okay, yeah, sure, okay. And he tries to tell his dad, but it also, later on in the movie, we find out that he's not a very good self-advocate for himself. He's not able to speak up for himself because he's afraid to, because he hasn't had to do that. Yeah. Which then you could tie into that maybe Mom protected him a lot more than she should have. And that additional layer is also fun to dig into, because then you begin to understand that Mom wasn't a perfect mom either, that maybe she was coddling him too much and wasn't. So there's this is the beauty of a good film with a great script is, there's so much there to unpack.
Yeah, because then you
could debate. Okay, how based upon what we see of Bastian in the movie, what part of him is Mom, and what part of that is good, and what part of that isn't so good. And you could literally draw parallels and draw a character sketch of Mom based upon how he acts, because he acts very different from Dad.
Yeah,
Dad is very orderly, precise. Got to go to work. Got to do this. I'm doing this. Here's my breakfast. I'm moving. I'm going. And Sebastian's just kind of like wandering around, wanders into the attic at school. We'll get to that. Like, there's a lot of things this kid does that's very kind of like not all that concrete. And so it lets us kind of get a window into what possibly mom looked like. And maybe why mom and dad worked so well, because they were so very different.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Well,
so
we'll get there. We'll talk about mom's name later.
Yeah, which we think we know, but we're also not. The movie is not very clear as to what it could have been. Anyway, so movie starts there. Kid goes to school, but he
tries to go to school.
But the bullies are trying to shake him down for money. Where's your money? You got money? I don't got any money. And then they chase him into the trash can. He goes in,
throw him in there. Like, it's really weird. Like, they don't do the traditional bullies like punching kind of thing. They just like grab him and
throw him in the
garbage can.
And then he gets out, and then
they're like, "Who told you could get out?"
They're sticking around waiting for him.
See, that remembers the type of bullying my older brother did to me when I was there. Like, who said you could leave the room? Come back in there. It's like, okay.
Right. And it does allow you to kind of. They're not your stereotypical bullies.
Yeah,
they're still bullies, and they're still a bit of a trope at times, but. There's an additional layer of menace to them. Like, they are watching and waiting for him to come back around because they don't want him to go to school. They want to, and so they chase him back, and he runs into a bookstore.
Yep.
And they don't figure out that he's there, and we meet Mr. Coriander.
Yeah.
And he has a book, and it's really interesting the conversation that these two have. It's not like it's the so much show and less tell.
Well, yeah, it's one of those things like when Mr. Coriander, because he dislikes children,
right?
Because he doesn't believe, kids these days don't like books and things like that. And he has the arcade is down the street, go down there and get your flashing lights and stuff.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, but Sebastian is not one of those kids, and that's when he starts saying like Robinson Crusoe, and starts listing off these books.
Yeah.
He catches Mr. Coriander's attention because like, oh, here's a mind that's open to this.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a good dynamic. Kind of good thing to see.
Yeah.
Where it's kind of like, all right, you found something that you're speaking the same language as this older gentleman who loves books. You can tell he's a book collector.
Yeah.
That bookstore's like when he gets on the phone, he talks about, I can find you like a $300 book.
Right. And in 1980, that wasn't cheap.
No, that was a lot of money.
That was not cheap money or easy money. I mean, it isn't easy money here today, but so it's interesting because this is the fun part of 80s movies that I enjoy, is that like there's a character that's almost like a spirit guide or a guide who kind of puts the character on a path but doesn't overtly do it so that the character figures it out.
Yeah, he uses reverse psychology.
He's like, don't take this. This
is not for you.
This is not for you. Don't do it. And then he goes and answers the phone, and then like when the kid takes it, he kind of smiles, like looks and it's gone, and he smiles, but there's a note that says, "I will bring this back later."
Yeah.
And our adventure is off.
Yeah.
He does not get to school on time. Not at all. Speaking of time, there's the bell.
Yeah, there's the bell.
He does not get to school on time at all. And this is the part of the movie that in 2022 would never happen.
Your reaction.
Ever. Oh my gosh. So he gets
the both of you, because you're both teachers. Even you were just like,
I
heard you in the back like, ugh.
Well, I was an attendance secretary when we first moved to Fort Morgan, and so I was the one who, like, if a kid wasn't there, I would make the phone call.
Go.
So whenever someone would not be in school, I would make the phone calls home to get in touch and figure out why. And there have been times that they don't know that they're not in school, and then you have to. Police are called.
Yeah.
And a search is sent out for that kid, and it is tense, but we've always found them, and it's always a conversation of thank you so much. We're so grateful for you. So I was going, why are they calling? I don't understand.
When I was doing my student teaching, my field experience, when I was learning how to become a teacher, there were situations where a kid, like the police were activated, and we had a situation in one of my field experiences where the police were actually like dispatched to the school, and there was like a search task force that was engaged to find and search for the kid. They eventually found him. There was something inconsequential. But in this day and age, a kid doesn't show up to school and the school calls home and says he or she is not here. Things get exciting fairly quickly if they're not able located. In this movie, however, the kid walks unescorted without a pass to class, climbs up on a chair, looks through the window, and says, "Oh, math test day.
Yeah.
Bad day." Turns around, goes up the stairs to a door which has a little box above it that says attic key. A key that is not secured.
And that glass is broken.
And the glass is already broken. And so he just grabs it, unlocks it, opens it, closes it, then is smart enough to open the door, grab the key out, and then close it behind him again. This would not happen in 2022. First of all, we don't have attics in our buildings, at least in our new buildings. Second of all, we have cameras in the hallways, and we would see you if you went to class and turned back around and went the other way. And third of all, if a kid did not show up for class and then you searched the building and cameras and rooms and couldn't find him, you would then begin the process of, as Vicki suggested, the police would become involved and you would begin to search
You'd
for
pull
the
up
child.
the footage. Yeah. The school would be like, is he around?
Where did he go? Where's his path? How did he get out? There is so much. But in 1980, whatever, when this movie was made, apparently that didn't happen.
Well, even when we were growing up, they really didn't pay that much attention to kids being kind of gone.
Right.
They marked the attendance book.
Right.
But I don't remember any teacher being like throwing that big of a fit.
Well, because it was before computers, so they the attendance slips would probably go to the office. The office would collect the attendance slips, and if the kid was gone, I don't know, would they make a phone call? Would they be like, hey, we got to call home, make sure where the kid's at? And that's something because I became a teacher in the electronic generation where everything's electronic, where every attendance is monitored and checked and rechecked and everything. I don't know how it was done in the 80s. I would suspect that there would be at least some kind of alarm raised. We don't get to see that, by the way, in the entire movie at any point that anyone is concerned about this kid.
It's in the attic all night.
Yeah.
Nobody is looking for this kid.
Yeah, and so you have to then jump to some conclusions, which we'll talk about here in a little bit.
Which, I'm sitting here like, come on, Dad.
Yeah.
Right.
Single dad. The only other being you really have to care about is your kid.
Right.
And he's gone.
Yeah.
So it's like there should have been people everywhere looking for his son.
Right. And going back to the school and being like, did he make it? Why wasn't he in school? He said, so yeah. And eventually, Mr. Coriander would have seen the news broadcast about a missing kid and been like, oh, well, he was in my shop. He got a book, something like that.
Yeah.
But here's the other thing is the fact that he knows where the key is, knows how to get into the attic, and knows how to secure himself suggests that this is not
his first time.
It's not his first time. This is not his first time up in the attic doing and behaving in the way he should. So it suggests that this is repeated behavior, which means they're not checking on him like they should. And that, again, is that whole thing of oh my gosh.
Especially with what we assume is you almost died.
Right.
You should be
you
extra looking out for this kid.
Paying attention to this kid a lot more. So we get him into the attic, and he begins the process of opening his book and reading the story. And we are then transformed and translated into Fantasia. We are made aware that the nothing is coming, and it is taking things away. The best part of this movie, and this is something we'll probably keep saying, and you probably will get tired of us saying it, some of the best things about 80s movies was the practical effects.
Yes.
Yeah.
This movie, aside from one or two moments of less than 2 seconds, there's no CGI issues, there's no green screen issues. It looks the way it should look.
Oh, yeah.
You're not oh, that's green screen. Oh, that's green screen. Oh, that's green screen. You're wow, they did some good work with matte paintings. Or, hey, wow, they did some great perspectives work where Atreyu looks taller than the guys who are whatever. So it's
Engiwook.
Yeah.
Professor Engiwook.
Yeah. Which is just beyond amazing when you look at how they do what they do. And the puppetry of the Stone Eater, just insane, the detail.
Yeah, the rock biter, the snail rider, and the bat rider.
Yeah. And they're not in the story for that long.
No.
They're in the beginning and the end.
But they help set up Fantasia and what's going on there right at the beginning, where it's kind of this is so dangerous. You got these people from these 3 different cardinal directions all coming together to try and go...
Yeah, to go talk to the princess and say, what do we do? How do we fix this?
The childlike empress.
Yeah, the childlike empress, right. What's interesting is when we get to... We're going to jump ahead for a second. When we get to the childlike empress, you see the diversity of this kingdom.
Oh, yeah.
There are so many different characters. You had people with 4 faces on them, and you had these
the fish person.
Apparently, there's some Easter eggs or Yodas in there
there's
too.
Yodas in there.
Oh,
there's
boy.
Mickey Mouse is in there.
Okay.
R2D2 and C3PO are somewhere in there. It's only in the far off shots.
Yeah.
And they're only there briefly.
Okay.
Because they couldn't really get the full rights to put them in there, obviously, because like there'd be some massive explosions. But yeah, you can go in there and you can find all those other types of characters, because Fantasia is supposed to be made out of imagination. It's where creativity kind of lives.
Well, and they don't really say that until you get to the end. And then you go, oh.
Yeah.
And so the movie trusts you to be smart enough. We've talked about this, James, you and I,
yeah.
about how movies need to be able to trust their audiences and their intelligence. And this movie does. It lets you kind of figure it out as you go along. We don't see the childlike empress in the beginning. Mm-mm. She doesn't make an appearance. We get to see the wizard or whatever he is. And he says, we've called for Atreyu. We've asked for a hero. He's coming. And then Atreyu shows up. And they're like,
I love how they just dismiss him.
You're a child. What are you doing? He's like, no, but I am Atreyu. I am. And he's like, and he's like, all right, cool. I'll leave. Bye.
Yeah.
And he literally turns around and he's like, wait. Okay, maybe we do need you. And he's like, okay, well, let's figure this out. What do I got to do? And they're like, well, you got to do this, and that. And you can't take your weapons with you, which I wish that they would explain that.
Yeah. No kidding.
They don't explain it, and they don't say why he couldn't. And maybe it's because since he's such a great warrior, he needs to be able to do it on his own with his own two hands. Maybe that's part of it.
Or this is the type of mission where it's kind of like your weapons aren't needed. Yeah. They're going to get in the way.
Yeah.
And it also shows the weight of like the childlike empress's choice.
Yeah.
Because even when he turns him away, the guy's like, wait, get back here.
Yeah.
And then does the whole like, here's the rules that you need to stand by.
Yeah.
We're going to give you the Orin,
which
is the symbol of
the
childlike empress.
Yeah. And you'll be acting on her behalf.
So it's kind of like, is that showing you kind of like implication of like, that's how important that symbol is? Where no one would touch him.
Yeah.
Unless they were really, really bad people.
Yeah. It's interesting for dang sure.
Because it's vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
It adds a layer of vulnerability where if something were to happen, Atreyu cannot defend himself.
Yeah. There is an interesting element. So we're gonna do a couple rabbit trails as we go here, but Atreyu is kind of portrayed, and again, it's not outright, but he's portrayed as Native American kind of characteristic trope kind of thing.
It goes off of, I think he enters into Sebastian's imagination from that picture he's got on his book or whatever.
Which I think is like the first clue of kind of how this works.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Indian like hunting the buffalo.
Yeah. What's interesting, so when he shows up, he has the bow and arrow and the arrows in a little pack or whatever, and they are very much, they look, but they're not like, you just see glimpses of his of that, and it has definitely Native American Indian influences there. That's discarded, and that's the last we get of it.
Yeah.
What's interesting is, in the sequel, they corrected and they did cast a person of color as Atreyu.
Yeah.
So he looks and has an appearance more of a Native American individual.
Yes.
What's interesting is, and this could be a debate at some time down the road. I don't know if we want to do it in this episode, but how much did it matter that was the focus of that story? And in the original, obviously Neverending story, it's not. It's maybe 15 seconds that they kill the white buffalo, they hunt the purple buffalo.
Purple buffalo, yeah.
And I mean, it's funny. Like purple buffalo, it's kind of okay. Well, this is Fantasia. It's weird.
Yeah.
And so it stretches, and the suspension of disbelief about that characteristic is just there. Like you don't read too much into it.
Yeah, of course not. What's
interesting about the sequel is it very much, as when we watch the trailer, we're just like, oh, okay, that's different. And without having, we will eventually watch the sequel because
Aaron really wants to watch part 2 and part 3.
I think because Vicki, my wife, was like, why would you do that to yourself? You would never do that. I'm like, here's the thing. It makes content. It gives us episodes.
You're going to have me and Aaron basically just like tearing these things apart.
Yeah.
Probably crying on like, because
in tears.
The sadness.
I'll have some good snacks on hand to make it a little better.
Yeah.
Give me
but I'll also laugh.
Give me a warm blanket and everything else. So
we have plenty.
Yeah, good. So that's an interesting dynamic.
Yeah.
Because there's the part of it it's suggested, but it's not confirmed. And then in the sequel, they went about and basically locked it in. And so there's a conversation about literature and representation and how portrayals are done and how that happens. I think it's just interesting from a perspective of both a writer and a reader of that wasn't strongly referenced in the first movie, and it was just kind of that part of him that could have been played up wasn't. It wasn't played up as a trope. No. It wasn't played up as like, oh, well, because I'm Native American, I have these tropish talents that are often maligned in movies and books about how they're portrayed inappropriately or not with respect towards what they're able to do and know and all these things. I think in Neverending Story, it doesn't become offensive. It's just he's from the tribe.
He's from the plains.
He's from the plains.
Hunts purple buffalo, and that's it.
And that's the end of it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really, nothing he does hinges on his background. Yep. It's just he is against the nothing and trying to win a battle. So moving forward from that, so he then is sent out into the world to try and find.
Cue a section of amazing music and some montages of really pretty
really good stuff. Like, I don't know if it was designed in studio or if they went on location. Given that it was done in Germany, obviously they've got some beautiful locations they could do, but they also did a lot of work in studio. But he is searching, and there's a dynamic where the hunter is hunting him, the creature, what's it called?
The Gamork.
The Gamork, who is trying to kill him. And is seeking him out.
They did a great thing. Vicki pointed out last night where it's kind of like they don't show you.
I thought he was terrifying as a kid.
Yeah. Oh, no, I talked to people today at the coffee shop, and they're like, yeah, no, the Gamork was scary.
Oh, my gosh.
Scary. But that's when you know it's good. Because even as an adult, you're like, okay, that's unsettling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, because it does what Jaws did with the shark in the Jaws movie. You didn't see the shark fully.
Until the end. And
you're like, ah!
But he's coming for you.
Right, and he's chomping on dudes, and you're just like, raw. So that's the power of hiding your antagonist and revealing him or her slowly but surely.
Because you get like those baleful, horrible green eyes.
Yeah.
And there's like that thunder flash, and you see something hairy and dark, and then that's it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, whoa.
Yeah.
What is this thing?
Definitely scary.
And the way he's hunting Atreyu, like he's like, you get that peaceful scene with Atreyu and Artax, and he feeds the horse, and everything's great and beautiful. You can see they love each other. Yeah. And you get to see the Mork in that same scene later, and it's kind of like more horrible. He's getting closer. Yeah. Look how close he is.
Yeah. It increases the tension. Yeah. It definitely makes you go, oh, what's going to happen? Because obviously somehow there's got to be a win. What this movie does is it doesn't give you the traditional win. Mm-mm. It doesn't give you the vanquishing of the nothing. Nope. It doesn't give you the vanquishing of the dark. Well,
you do get the Gamork dies.
Yeah, the Gamork does die.
But that's like the only real kind of like violent confrontation in this whole movie.
Right, or even resolution.
Yeah.
So that's again, I think the 80s, when you look at those movies, how they were crafted and written, they were crafted towards an eye for, it's not going to be a happy ending. I mean, it mostly was, but it's going to be that ending where you're like, there's more adventures to be had here.
Only straight up, let's be honest, this movie drags you into like the pit of despair. Yeah. And then here's hope. Yeah. Here's that shining ray of hope.
Yeah. So speaking of the pit of despair, so we end up in, what do they call it?
Swamps of Sadness.
Swamps of Sadness. And what I had forgotten, because I had watched this movie like in pieces. I've seen bits over my life, but I never watched it full the way through. And I remember what happens with the horse because people talk about it all the time when I mention this movie.
Yeah, because it's emotionally traumatizing in a way, but it's like it's. I don't know. It's complicated. We'll talk about it, but it's just kind of like, wow.
And the movie doesn't flinch away from it.
No,
it doesn't cut away. It is the reality of you as a viewer know what's going on before Atreyu does.
Yeah, I would back it up and say not so much traumatizing, but it's just kind of like whoa because they don't swerve away. It's like this is what's happening.
Yeah, and you as a viewer know while Atreyu doesn't quite yet. Yeah, and so you realize it as a watcher, as a viewer. And you're just going, oh, Atreyu, you're in. Oh, no, this is going to. Oh, Atreyu, you don't know it yet. You don't know it yet.
As soon as Artax starts moving, we as the viewers are like, oh, no. Yeah. But Atreyu is kind of like, no, it's like that. He's trying to just. I think he maybe is guessing at it. Yeah. But he's hoping. But he thinks
he can win. Yeah. And he doesn't. It's a sad story. Like the horse dies, is swallowed up in the sadness.
Because it gives up.
Yeah, look at the acting that the kid puts in that scene. Yeah. Where you can see it on the actors, like he's getting torn apart right now. Yeah. On screen in front of us.
Yep. Even the eyes of the horse, just like
They definitely did a heck of a job training their horses to do the right thing and do it well. So this scene is hard. It's sad. Nobody likes to watch a horse die. No. Nobody wants to every kid in the world is just like, meh. But the power of it is that it leaves you sad and empty, and it leaves room for now. Okay, now we're gonna move to the next thing. Now we're going to find the next person or the next thing, whatever, etc.
Yeah.
So then he goes to the old one,
Morla,
who sneezes on him like 5 times because he's allergic to youth.
Yeah.
Which I love.
Giant nihilistic turtle.
Yeah.
He's lived way too long.
Yeah.
Nothing to do.
Yeah. Doesn't really care.
He's only talking to herself, himself, their self for thousands of years.
Reminded me of Gollum a little bit in that sense.
Yeah. Just.
Yeah.
But I mean, super wise and intelligent.
Yeah.
But it's just nihilistic.
Yeah.
Doesn't care anymore.
Yeah, and doesn't give him a solution. I think she says you could go talk to the Oracle.
She does tell him, it's like, you could go speak to the Oracle, but it's 10,000 miles away. You'll never get there.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like, that's it. Give up.
Yeah. And then we get...
Well, you get like the fantastic ray of hope. Remember, we're in a pit right now.
Yeah.
And then the Gmork is almost right on top of him.
Yeah.
When we get our fantastic ray of hope that just comes out of the sky and scoops him up, Falkor, which is the luck dragon.
Our luck dragon. Yep. Which is the image that people associate the most with the Neverending story, because he's this great big gigantic like long dog
dragon. Yeah.
Dog dragon.
They modeled the face after a dog, I think, because they said it was more friendly and nice to like children.
Oh, I wonder why
like
they did that.
Children would be more open and like friendly with this dragon.
Yeah.
And also they modeled it off for like Eastern dragons because the original author of the books liked Eastern mythology better.
Right.
And he liked how like Eastern, like in Eastern mythology, like Japanese, Chinese.
Yeah.
That
the dragons are
are good, wise thing. Well, there's evil ones, but there's like they're mostly good, wise creatures that are there. They can dispense wisdom. Yeah. And all that kind of stuff, and they have those long kind of like snaky bodies and no wings and stuff. It's more in Western mythologies when you get like the dragons are like evil, horrible beings that are like are not benevolent at all.
Yep. So he gets rescued by the luck dragon, and he wakes up on like an asteroid, I think. It feels like an asteroid.
It feels like an asteroid because the way they put all the space around it, this kind of thing. But I don't think it is. I think it's just the southern portion. It's another fantastic area of the.
Maybe it's like a top of a cliff or something.
Yeah.
I'm making Hobbit illusions. But, you know.
Yeah. So they show up there, and he tells them, "You're like, I didn't get you the full distance. You still have like 200 miles to go."
Yeah, just about
something like that. I got to the 9,980 miles, and he says there's people in there you need to talk to, and it turns into. I think this is the comic relief that we've been waiting for as an audience.
Yeah.
And movies do this. They'll structure like the tense, terrifying, depressing, and sad. And then you bring in some humor to kind of balance it out.
Yeah, it gives you room to breathe.
Yep.
Because you know nothing bad is going to happen right now. Especially because like they dragged us down.
Yeah.
Into like a dark spot. And then they gave us hope. So they brought us back up. And here's some levity to make it even lighter, kind of happier.
Yeah.
And we get, the first gate kind of thing. Well, they got that funny thing with the witch and the wench.
The witch and her husband, and he just like, they go back and forth. It's a lot like in Princess Bride when it's Billy Crystal and whoever else. And they're going back and forth. I think that's just a hilarious little...
I don't know which one of them came out first to do that. But yeah, it's a good thing where it's like you have the husband and wife fighting with each other.
Right.
Kind of aspect.
I think that's even more like an 80s kind of feel.
Yeah.
Princess Bride.
Because I swear,
1987 Princess Bride.
Okay. So this came out first.
This is the original.
Yeah, apparently. So yeah, Neverending Story was released in the U.S. on July 20th, 1984.
Yeah.
And then Princess Bride came out in the U.S. on September 1987. So there's a very real possibility that the Princess Bride writers pulled this because it feels very familiar.
Yeah.
It feels really familiar. Like it's like, okay, it's not a bad thing because copying is the greater source of like whatever.
Well, even Miracle Max and Princess Bride, that segment, while it was in a dark spot, it gave levity and kind of lifted you back up, gave you room to breathe before they went right back into like the story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep. So then they have their thing, and then he talks about the gates and what's ahead.
Yeah.
And they go and they watch, and apparently regularly people try and pass by the gate to do whatever they need to do, and they're all dying.
Yeah.
And we watch one get beat up and lasered to death.
From the Sphinx eyeballs.
The Sphinx eyeballs.
Which is amazing. As a kid, it freaked me out. Like, these things can see inside you.
Yeah.
And tell, like, what judge you.
Yeah.
and then just kind of like blast you if they don't like you. I'm like, whoa, whoa.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a good thing. Where it's like it's a trope in a lot of fantasies and things like where you need knowledge, and this person has knowledge, but you need to pass through trials to get there. And this is kind of like what this represents.
Yeah.
And it's like also like it kind of brings that Bastion closer into this world, which we need to happen.
Right. And he slowly but surely is getting there. Like he's being pulled in. There's references to kind of he says something and people are like looking around and stuff like that. Who's that voice or what was that? Whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, they get so Bastion decides I need to get through. I need to go where I need to go.
Well, not Bastion. It's Atreyu.
I'm sorry, Atreyu. Atreyu decides he needs to go. I'm going to try it. Don't do it. He just takes off running. We didn't tell you about the second one. And so he gets to the first one and he like jumps through it basically.
He was doing fine.
Yeah.
But then he saw the knight's corpse.
What's left of him,
what was left of him, and kind of freaks out.
Yeah.
So as soon as he does that, then the Sphinx eyes start to open and are going to give him the zap. Yeah. But he just like dodge rolls through it. He pulls a Dark Souls maneuver and dodges the laser beams, and he's good. He made it through because apparently they don't keep shooting at you. And then you get one shot and that's it.
Interesting.
But yeah, he makes it through.
Okay.
And proceeds to the second gate. Like they really don't cover it. Well, you get Engiwook telling like Falkor, like because Falkor's like, great, he made it through, whatever. Yeah. And Engiwook's like, no, the second gate is the most horrible gate.
The mirror,
which is like the mirror, like it's the second gate, like you face your true self. Mm-hmm. And I like how he says like most men when they're faced with like Engiwook is a good speech here, and I can't remember it line for line, but it's kind of like where you find like kind men find out they're cruel and things like that. It was like people faced with the reality of themselves, like the real truth.
Yeah,
will run away screaming because you can't face it because you're locked into your own set of being.
Right.
I'm this way, and this is how people should perceive me.
Right.
But then when the real reality of it's kind of like, oh, you could be a nightmare.
Yeah. Well, and here Atreyu doesn't see himself; he sees Bastion. And it's kind of a cool moment because Bastion kind of goes, that's impossible.
Yeah, he freaks out a little bit.
Yeah, freaks out. He's like, that's not real. That can't be possible.
But I mean, who wouldn't reading a book and they describe exactly what you're doing all of a sudden?
Right, and what you look like and who you are and everything like that. So it's a cool little moment. And then he gets through to the Sphinx, and we find out that the Sphinx are actually the Oracle.
Yeah.
And he's asked like, well, what can be done? And they say she has to be given a new name.
Yeah, the childlike empress needs to be given a new name by a human child.
And he's like, well, how do we find a human child and everything else? And
this is the point where I got amused by your reaction, Aaron, because you're watching this going, oh, the empress needs to die.
Yeah.
And then it's a new name, and you went, wait, what?
Yeah, like you were first like, oh, she's going to die. And then it's like, new name. It's like, what?
I mean, death, new name. Maybe she needs to be reborn. I don't know. It was a possibility.
Can't predict this film.
No, I like that it was a bit unpredictable. That was an element that is different from like, well, you got to save her, or you have to be the knight in shining armor, or like, no, we just need to give her a new name, but it can't be done by anybody but a human child.
And I love. There's a little bit of lines that you get there from the Southern Oracle too, where like as she's crumbling, because you can see pieces of her like falling off while he's talking to them. And you get like there's a bigger picture, and there are forces in Fantasia that are actively trying to give Atreyu and everybody else time.
Yeah,
because there's things like we can't hold it off for very long. So it's like, okay, how many other beings like the Southern Oracle are out there actively trying to like push back?
Yeah,
as they're getting devoured and destroyed.
Yeah,
so it's kind of like, wow, all right, okay. And that's why he takes off running again, like after he gets like that answer.
Yeah,
because he can see her, just like you see like chunks of her, like their
falling
face
apart,
falling off, whatever. It's kind of like, whoa.
Yeah, the world is indeed falling apart.
Yeah.
So he Bastion seems to have starts to figure out that he's the human child they're talking about. But
he doesn't really believe it.
Right. But there's not really like a process of like, well, this is how you fix it. Like here's how we get. It's like he's on the far reaches and the boundaries of Fantasia. And so,
you have to go beyond the boundaries of Fantasia to find a human child.
Yeah,
which is kind of awkward,
right? Because
where do you go?
At that point, we don't know what Fantasia is. Like, it's not spelled out. We're guessing, But we don't know that Fantasia is actually the imagination.
Yeah,
and
so it has no boundaries. We get this knowledge
Yeah.
from the Gmork.
Yeah.
Like the most, like the nothing is its own thing, but I don't really conflate it to evil so much, because it's just doing
depression.
It's just doing this job of eating things up. The
Yeah.
Gmork, I would say, there's your raw evil.
Yeah.
Totally.
Because the Gmork is kind of like when he spells this out, because like. Well, we'll jump back a little bit where I'll say, like, Atreyu runs back, gets on Falkor. You get another good scene of them just flying all over these places, searching for the boundary.
Right.
And they slam it into nothing. They get separated.
Yeah.
And then Atreyu winds up on a beach. He's looking for the Orin because it's gone.
Yeah.
He goes wandering off in this ruin, which you see, like, these scenes where, like, you can see, like, it maybe like a prophecy.
Yeah,
like
there's
there's
paintings on the wall and stuff like that.
Paintings on the wall that sees his journey.
Yeah.
And then he comes face to face with the Gmork.
Yep.
In the meantime, you see Falkor is looking for him.
Yeah.
And so the Gmork just basically lays out a whole bunch of knowledge.
Yeah.
Because I don't work for the nothing.
Yeah.
I work for the thing behind
The nothing. Yeah.
And it's like, whoa,
what is that?
Yeah, what is going on here?
Yeah.
And it's like, no, we want Fantasia to be destroyed because it takes away like people's hopes and such.
And then you're more able to control them when they lose their hope, which I thought was fascinating and terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, whoa. So the Mork is like really, really evil because he's making a conscious choice to be like, yeah, I don't care about all you. This is a good thing.
Yeah.
And it's not a good thing.
No, it's
and that's
terrible.
when he lays down, it's like, Fantasia's made up all of imagination. There's no boundaries.
Yeah.
So your search that you were trying to go through wholeheartedly, Atreyu, is for nothing.
Yeah.
It's a waste of time.
Yeah.
And we're going to be sitting here until the nothing swallows us up because it's right outside.
Right. And then, like, Atreyu's like, well, I would rather, like, die fighting than doing
he
nothing.
picks up, like, that shard of rock.
Yeah.
And he's just kind of like, fine then.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
And the Gmork tries to kill him, but he wins, gets the Gmork in the heart, and then all hell breaks loose to continue. And, like, the world starts to tear apart.
Yeah.
And this is at the point where the actor, I think, got injured in some capacity. Well, they had a stuntman for some of it.
Yeah.
But he also got injured probably a little bit. And I think...
like in the scene where like the nothing's tearing up that whole thing, because like I said, the nothing is right outside.
Yeah,
it starts eating up that thing where you get like this. They did that cool kind of Inception thing where they rotated the sound stage.
Yeah,
to get that like the wind is blowing him so hard that he can just hang on to like a tree.
Yeah,
that was a stuntman.
Yeah,
there's like a goofy wig.
Yeah,
I really wasn't paying attention, but apparently you can see that there's a really goofy wig on this person that's doing that.
Yeah,
and then again, Falkor scoops him up.
Yep, and takes him to safety, but they're basically going through space.
Yeah, like there's like they get sucked up by the nothing and kind of spit out the other side, and you find out nothing's won basically at this point because Fantasia's just rocks in space.
Yep, and they go looking for the actual the ivory tower.
Well, they're looking for where we go? What do we do? What are we looking for here?
Yeah.
And then you do get to see the Orin does serve a purpose because you ask the Orin for guidance.
Yeah,
and it glows.
Yeah.
And I mean, the next scene, they just show you the ivory tower, but it's hinted there that the Orin guides them.
Okay.
Look, here's a chunk of stuff left.
Right.
Mm-hmm. The ivory tower, the heart of Fantasia's still there.
Yeah.
But it's the only thing that's left.
Right.
So like I did gloss over the rock biter sitting there totally.
Oh, yeah.
That's so sad.
Because of this reaction that we got right now, because that scene is difficult for me. It's another one of those scenes where
really
it's difficult
hard
to deal with.
Yeah.
Because when Atreyu rock in that ruins, like we're backing up a bit, like right before he meets the Gmork, he runs across the rock biter.
Yeah, and the rock biter says these look like strong hands.
These look like big strong hands.
Yeah, but
he tried so hard to hold on to his
friends. He tried to hold on to his friends, which is the bat rider and the snail rider.
Yeah, but couldn't.
And the nothing just sucked him away.
Yeah.
And there was nothing he could do, so he's just, I'm gonna sit here and just let it take me.
But he does it again when he says, I'm just gonna sit here and wait for it to take me away. And then there's a beat of a moment, and then he goes, these look like good strong hands, and you're just like, movie.
Yeah.
Really? Like they sucker punch you once when you meet him up with him, and and it's very poetic.
Yeah.
It's very much like he like the rock biter is having that realization. He's not going to win. He is going to die.
He's not strong enough.
He's not strong enough against the nothing. He can't, even as big and as powerful as he is. And I think it's a cool theme of a reminder of you can't do anything alone. And it's kind of one of those, like the movie is just it's lightly and almost even in like really pushing that knife into your side to kind of gently be like, hey, do you recognize this in your life? Have you ever had this moment where you thought you were strong enough and you weren't? Ha ha, we're going to poke you. Ha ha ha.
Well, again,
it's like terrible.
This is the movie's
but it's
action
good.
Of bringing us down.
Yeah.
Like, it's stripping away, like, there's no hope here.
Yeah.
There's no good things happening here.
Superman's not coming in from Krypton on this one.
And then, they have that thing where they get swept up by the nothing, and then when you see Fantasia just destroyed, it's kind of like, that's the end.
Yep.
Where's hope?
Yeah.
And then they find hope again, like the little bit of hope. They bring us back up.
Yeah.
Childlike Empress is still there.
Yep.
She's still around.
Yep. She's still alive. And then we get to know that there's nothing left. There's no hope. It's all going to go.
Yes. Because she's like, they're trying, she starts laying, she is another character where she starts laying things out for Atreyu. It's kind of like, it's not you.
Yeah.
It's not your fault. Because remember, Atreyu's taking it all on himself.
Yeah.
Which is like, woo, no. This is a heavy burden to bear. It's not you. It's the one out there.
Yeah.
And that's when Sebastian says some stuff and they all like react to it, whatever, because he's really close now. She tells him, like, he's right there.
Yeah.
He just needs to realize it. And Sebastian in the real world is just like, no. He's having this huge moment, just like, no.
Yeah.
Even though it's affecting the book and the ivory tower starts to crack and break.
Yeah, falling apart and everything else. And so he finally, like, the windows fly open. And
remember, I give props to this child actress.
Yeah.
Because when she starts crying,
and
she turns and looks right at the screen, and just like she's crying. It's like, Bastion, call my name, like give me my name, like he's right there. And it's like, that's a huge moment, and you don't know what's gonna happen until he said, "Fine, I'll do it," and he runs up to the window, and you're like, "What are you doing?"
And then he shouts the name. Now the movie, the closed captioning, because we always turn on closed captioning because I always want to see whatever, but it doesn't give us a name in the closed captioning. Now, reading into some of the details, the suggestion or some of what people have said, what he actually said is Moonchild.
Yeah, Moonchild.
Which obviously is a weird name for someone to have, even in the 80s. But apparently that was Mom's name, and so she was Moonchild.
Yeah. The other thing is, like, a lot of people, like, I kind of like the thing where it's like, you can't really tell.
Yeah.
Like, that's good. Like, it may be one of those things that we don't really need to know. It's not that important.
Right.
But I know a lot of people online and everything agonizes it, and they still agonize over it.
Yeah.
But it's like, he does shout, like, Moonchild. And it's kind of like, well, all right, maybe Mom had a hippie name.
Yep. And so then he shouts Moonchild. And what happens after that? Does it
Moonchild, and then everything goes black.
Yeah.
And then you get to see the little hand holding.
Right.
This is a great, like, it's the childlike Empress talking directly to Sebastian.
And
now.
Bastion's there.
Bastion's there physically with her.
Yeah.
And she's telling it, like, they talk about how everything's gone. It's hopeless. She's like, no, there is. You just, like, hear this grain of sand.
It's always dark in the beginning.
Yeah, it's always dark in the beginning. She gives him the grain of sand, and she tells him, it's like, what do you want to wish for?
How many wishes do I get? And she's like, as many as you want.
As many as you want, because it's like imagination again. It's like the re-spark of imagination.
Right. And so then he wishes for...
He wishes for a Fantasia back. You see all this stuff. You get, like, the beautiful music again, where it's like, look, things are being reborn. Things are okay.
You get the gift that you always see where he's, like, on the dog dragon with his hand going...
Yeah, he's got his stuff. Yay!
Yeah.
So fun.
It's even better than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
And you get to see all our characters are back.
Yep. Everyone's back. The horse is back.
Fantasia's whole.
Yep.
And then, it's like Falkor does the thing where it's like the other funny part. I love the ending. It's like, I know people hated it.
Yeah.
Like the author of the book despised the ending where, like, he brings Falkor to the real world.
Well, no, Falkor says, what other wishes do you have? And he whispers in Falkor's ear, and Falkor goes,
laughs, that great laugh.
And then Falkor shows up in the real world.
Yes.
And not only are the kids freaked out, the entire world's freaked out.
Yeah, you see the adults in the background, like, reacting to this thing coming out of the sky to chase Sebastian.
It's Godzilla.
Bullies.
What is happening?
Yeah, they're like, it's a monster.
Right.
What is it? And it just to chase his bullies around.
Yeah, and he chases them into the trash can.
It's great.
And it's fantastic.
I like it.
And, like, they do the thing where they do, like, he flies away on the dragon. Sebastian had more adventures.
But that's a story for another time.
Yeah, another time.
Dun, dun, and the movie's over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're wondering, well, hey, what about the sequels, Aaron? So the unfortunate bit is they made a Neverending Story Part 2.
Like, how many
3
years later?
So this, 1991 in the United States. So whatever 1984
Like 8 years later?
So 8, yeah.
Because remember, the 84 is when it released in the States. So it was finished earlier, like 83 or something.
No, it was released in Germany in April of 84 and July of 80. So at least the original Neverending Story was released in 84 across the world.
All right.
And then the Neverending Story 2 was released on October 25th, 1990, and then it released in the States on February 8th, 91.
Oof.
So however many years it is between 84 and 91?
7
years. So that's a long time to wait for a sequel. The unfortunate bit is it has Jonathan Brandis, and his story is hard because he was a really cool actor. He was on a soap opera. He starred in the Neverending Story 2. He was cast in the NBC series Sequest DSV. I remember watching him on Sequest DSV.
Yeah, I remember that.
Unfortunately, Jonathan Brandis in 2003 took his own life after a period of heavy drinking and career setbacks. So he was 27 years old. I knew I recognized him from somewhere. I thought he was on Home Improvement, but that was another guy that I remember. So he it's one of those things where it's just like you just kind of go, dang it.
Yeah.
Such a great possibility.
You had so many possibilities laid out, and you've only covered a third of the book, so there's so much more to go off of you could have used.
Yeah. So the sequel, we watched the trailer for the sequel, and we were not impressed.
No.
It didn't look good.
We all flinched away.
Yeah. It looked like it was
But we're going to watch it, you guys.
Yeah, we're apparently going to watch it. I'm making us do it. And it was done in a way like you could tell that the filmmaking was like just a level below the previous. And it continues. So we get Bastian again. He's once more returning.
But now he's blonde and blue-eyed.
Yep. And Coriander's bookstore, he returns to it. He rediscovers the Neverending Story. And so there's things that happen there.
And there's new bullies, and one of them...
No, that's number 3.
Not yet. Sorry, I thought we were on the third, but I'm ready for it.
So there's a whole story there. We'll get to it. So Neverending Story Part 2 hit in 1991.
And
then it didn't do very well. And then, for whatever reason,
he did another one.
They decided to bring it back in 1994 in Germany, and then in the United States, a limited release in 1996, which tells you that if a movie released 2 years ago in Germany and then gets released 2 years late, it's not a good sign. That's not a good sign. So the Neverending Story Part 3.
Well, you said they had this movie was a step back. Part 3 is 10 steps back.
You went back to the beginning of Genesis and did everything wrong.
Yeah, this. Even just the trailer was just kind of like, what?
Yeah.
What?
So we discovered, and you'll be delighted, listeners, to know that this is one of Jack Black's first films.
Yeah.
And Jack Black.
This is Vicki's factoid. You just stole it from her.
We both were like, is that Jack Black?
She recognized him on
I
screen.
do it with the eyes. I was like, that's Jack Black. And you were like, no. And I'm like, telling you, that's him.
And so we looked it up, and yes, indeed, it was Jack Black in this film.
Don't know why I'm excited about this.
He's the bully, and he plays a particular role as a bully who is trying to destroy the Fantasia or I don't know what is. It's a whole hot plot mess, which we'll get into at some point. But Jack Black, for years after this movie was released in '96, absolutely refused to answer questions about it.
Well, he got involved because he loved the original movie.
Yeah.
We wouldn't.
So it's kind of like, if you're going to have the chance to star in a movie franchise or something that you love so much, it's kind of like you'd kind of want to do it too. But apparently he hated the whole experience because it was so wrong. Yeah. But he went through with it anyway.
Yeah.
It's Ryan Reynolds with the very first Deadpool that appeared in the Wolverine Origins movie. Yeah. Where Deadpool's mouth was shut. It was just terrible. Yeah. It's like, what did you do?
Yeah. Also, interestingly enough, the main character in Part 3 is the character from Free Willy.
Oh, that's who that actor is.
Yeah, he plays the character Jesse, who befriends Willie the Orca. So Jason James Richter, after the success of Free Willy, got pulled into this one.
I mean, I was having issues watching the trailer getting beyond his hair.
Oh, it was
that
bad.
hair.
Yeah. Oh, and then the librarian touches it all weird, and I'm just like, that's not appropriate.
Yeah, Coriander in that third trailer. I'm just kind of like, what?
So much interesting.
It's so weird.
We're gonna come full circle with Labyrinth. The special creature effects for Neverending Story Part 3 were provided by Jim Henson's Creature Shop.
Oh
no!
So we have that to look forward to.
Oh, hi. How far have we fallen?
I'm sure the character effects
Maybe
are
they
delightful.
spent all the money on the
Jim
creature effects
Henson.
and just tanked everything else. It's
Yeah.
like, we don't need to worry about hiring quality actors.
Yeah.
We got Jim Henson's Creature Shop behind us.
Yeah.
They'll flock to us for that.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, so the Nasties, that's the gang name. They find the Neverending Story and use it to bombard Fantasia with fireballs in a storm. Like, it's
Well, because it's made up of imagination.
right.
I mean, I guess I was briefly read it because I was kind of busy over the night, whatever. But it was kind of like, briefly read it where it's kind of like the Fantasia and like the things that happen there. Like the Nothing, when it was swallowing people up, is spitting negativity into our world.
Yeah.
So that's what's kind of like happening. Everything like a creature or something died in Fantasia, it would create negative thoughts, negative like hate and anger and stuff in our world, and lies.
Yeah.
That's the other one. Big one was lies.
Yep.
So it's kind of like, whoa, okay. So there's a lot going on here. I want to read the book now.
I do too. I'm probably going to check it out. So that is part 3 and part 2. We're definitely going to watch that because I think if we're going to get a whole picture of this film series and of this world, I think it's important. Also, it drives content. So hey,
it's going to hurt.
It's going to hurt. Yeah, this.
So if you enjoy listening to Aaron and the three of us getting hurt, then stay tuned to future episodes.
Bring on the pain, as they say.
I don't think we're going to do it right away though.
No, we're going to.
We need a break.
We might need some breathing room. So that has been the film, The Neverending Story.
Yeah, I wish I could speak of the book more, but I really didn't know there was a book to this.
It's a solid film. Like, it's up there with Back to the Future as a perfect movie. It is really...
I wouldn't put it that far.
Oh, I would.
Because Back to the Future is way out there. Come on.
Oh my gosh, this movie
was really, really good though. I mean,
it was exceptional.
I'm still giving it a 9.
It's exceptional. Are you kidding me? Look, I suffered through Batman, the schizophrenic plot that couldn't make up its mind until it was halfway through, and then finally it picked a speed and went with it. Like, you compare the structure of this versus that.
You're talking about the old Batman, not the current.
Yeah, I was like, which one are you talking
about?
No,
the original. Yeah, the original Michael Keaton, the first Michael Keaton Batman.
Because the second one is like your favorite
I love
of all
Batman
time,
Returns. Batman Returns is legit. Like, that movie is firing on all cylinders. It is full steam ahead. Like, let's make this happen. But yeah, like, this movie. It's on the level of like Labyrinth, Goonies, like those just 80s movies that they figured out what story they were going to tell. They got great, exceptional actors to play the roles and to emote and to rock your socks and to make you feel something. And they did it without trying to make it something that it wasn't.
Yeah, and they weren't afraid to do something. They didn't pull those punches. Those sad parts are there for a reason.
Yep, they exist to affect you.
Yes, and
they exist, and they don't apologize. They don't try and make it cutesy or like make it okay. It's like, no, for like, you know, in Star Wars Empire Strikes Back, the Jedi and the Rebels lose.
Yeah,
and you feel it. You see them lose, and it hurts, and it sucks, and you feel bad, but you're supposed to. That's the beauty of filmmaking. That's the beauty of good storytelling. Is you need to feel something in your gut, in your heart, in your center. Yeah. Because if you don't, you're not watching a good movie.
Yeah, I mean, because that's the problem nowadays, where it's like they'll have something bad happen and almost immediately wipe it out.
Right?
Like, no, this is okay. Here, it's all here. Yeah. It's like, no, you should trust.
Yeah.
Let it.
I don't need a warm blankie and a pacifier movie. I need to feel and cry. Give me my time. Yeah. Let me throw a tantrum. Okay.
Well, I mean, because I think in this movie they knew at the end everything was going to be okay.
Yeah.
Like, everything's going to be fine, folks. Yeah. It's kind of like trusting the narrator to tell you a good story and put you in a good place at the end.
Yep. It's a solid film. I think there's a lot to be talked about at some point down the road as we look at the other movies of how the wiping out of Fantasia is kind of Bastian, like, moving on. Like letting go of his past and his grief with his mom and letting that world be destroyed and building it anew. Yeah, building a new imagination, a new future, a new realm of possibilities for him to handle and deal with things. And it doesn't show us that at all. Yeah. Within the context of this film.
Well, I think a little of it is like you look at the journey that Atreyu goes through and like the sadness parts.
Yeah.
I mean, that's Atreyu is kind of like the mirror, as they show the second gate. He's the mirror reflection of Sebastian.
Yeah.
So like that's what he's fighting with, is all this sadness, and then just trying to find hope and good little bits to pull him through.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's excellently reflected in that movie, in that journey, like losing the horse. Yeah. You know, and then just like, okay, the only, like, he's in the very bottom pit, and like the only advice he gets is like, give up.
Right.
Yeah, just give up. It's cool. Whatever. Yeah. You know. it's going to happen to us all. And then somehow he finds hope out of like that.
Yeah.
And like, it's Valcorn. It's amazing. But it's kind of one of those things like, okay, hope. Is this still there?
Yeah.
Cling to it. Reach out for it.
Yeah.
Like it's that beautiful scene where Atreyu's reaching up to the heavens.
Yeah.
Just for anything. And that's what answers.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, there's still hope out there.
Yeah.
Don't give up.
Yeah. Never give up. Never surrender. Keep fighting.
Sometimes starting over is the best option.
Yep. Keep fighting the good fight. Well, I'd give this film a 10 out of 10.
I gave it a 9.
Okay.
8 to 9. I thought it was really good.
Okay.
That reaction. Is this going to be a thing?
We'll just pretend that.
I love the Labyrinth. Personally,
Labyrinth,
I rate Labyrinth higher, but I still love Neverending Story.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Well, this has been Nerds by Screenlight. We hit our hour, as we generally do, with 10 minutes on the other side as well. Thanks for listening. Thanks for putting up with us. We are looking for feedback. If you want to hit us with some info, tell us how we're doing. Tell us what you think. Shoot me an email, adelayedteacher@gmail.com. We'll read it on the air when we get those emails.
Yeah, please do. We've been looking for some feedback, or even if you guys have a few movies or things you think we should watch.
If you want to punish us with the terrible movies of the world, of the sci-fi geek world, Battlefield Earth is not happening.
No, we're not doing
I am
that.
just putting that out there right now. That is the one veto that I'm gonna wield. Battlefield Earth is not happening.
No.
Just no. Not today, not ever, not tomorrow.
But we will do Neverending Story 2 and 3, everybody.
Yep.
Yeah. That's how bad we rank.
There's a certain amount of pain that we can muster up, but
like I wasted the time to watch that whole movie, and I wish I could have that time back.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's unfortunate, and well, maybe someday we'll explain why. But for now, my name is Aaron.
I'm James.
I'm Vicki.
And this has been Nerds by Screenlight. We will see you on the next one. Have a
We're gonna go get some mac and cheese.
Rest of your day.
Yeah.
See you later,
care,
folks.
everybody.
Bye.
The raspberry flapovers will be out in a moment. The kitchen is closed.
You've been listening to the Nerds by Screenlight podcast, presented by Create at Morgan Productions, located in Fort Morgan, Colorado, USA. For more information on our production house, other podcasts hosted here, and further details, please visit www.createatmorgan.org. You can find us on Twitter at the handle CreateAtMorgan. Create at Morgan is a school club at Lincoln High School, our alternative education campus in Morgan County. Our sponsor is Aaron DeLay, a language arts teacher at Lincoln. Send any feedback to adelayedteacher@gmail.com. Thank you for listening to our podcast.